if you spend any amount of time looking at martial arts YouTube or even looking at just like old books and stuff, you're going to see the concept of safety coming up. And like I don't want to throw the guy into the bus because I like the guy, but if you watch Shadi's channel, he's mostly a judo guy and he compares judo to other arts and historical stuff and whatnot. He very, very frequently talks about safety. And it reminds me of like reading Charlemont's book from 1899, going into Savate and changing Savate from a kind of backroom brawling self-defense style into an elegant social boxing style. And we see some of the same thing with like Itosu, taking karate and turning it into eventually Shotokan. I know that goes through Funakoshi, but like that segueing of karate into Japanese karate, school kid karate. We see the same thing with Farmer Burns taking catch wrestling and turning that into American folk style wrestling. And we can see this on and on and on. I mean, look at the progression of fencing. We go from like historical fencing to modern Olympic fencing. And there's a whole lot of steps to get there, but a lot of it's in the name of safety. Some of it's in the name of delineating points for scoring and stripping things down so you have an equal playing field, and I get that. But a lot of it is in the name of safety. If we look at a lot of the rules, and I've talked about this a lot, if we look at a lot of the rules in MMA and other combat sports for sure, but in MMA very specifically, because at least that's where my combat sports background came from, we see a lot of rules that are in the name of safety. Now, whether or not those rules actually give us safety is another argument, which I would argue they don't. But we're not going to get into that. The question we're really talking about is how safe is too safe? How safe should we be training? And there's really only one general answer, and that general answer is safe enough that you can come back the next day and train. That's as safe as your training should be. Your training should be safe enough to facilitate continued long-term training. As a secondary, your training should be safe enough not to scare off your training partners, with the caveat that you are not catering to people who are particularly sensitive, particularly weak, and don't want to get stronger, who don't want to be challenged. Look, what we are doing is inherently dangerous. It is inherently dangerous. And it is quite important for the martial arts to be trained in as specific a context as possible without, breaking into the lines of causing like serious irrevocable harm or permanent damage. And we don't want to be doing things that are going to take us out of training the next day. Let's make this as a comparison to lifting weights or to any kind of resistance training or fitness training in general. You know that progress is made over time, over repetitions and hours of training. It cannot all be made in a single session. It is not possible for all of your gains to be made in a single session. And so anything that you do that is going to make you have to lay off a training for a while was probably too far. Now, should we be able, or should we have to go too far to figure out where those boundaries are? No, we can kind of figure out where some of those are, right? Just like in lifting and in fitness, right? We have this rating of perceived exertion or reps in reserve. This kind of idea where we kind of know that our intensity levels. Now, you can try to put number scores on that, but that's not going to always work out too well. But you kind of know where full power is, and you kind of know where less than full power is. And you should naturally have, and I say naturally, but you should develop this as a skill too. You should be able to, in communication, in body language communication with your training partners, be able to figure out where the line is. And we know that over the course of a training session and over the course of familiarity with training partners, you're going to allow escalation to happen, and then escalation is just going to inevitably happen. And it's important for communication to continue throughout, to pull back when you feel like you're running up against a wall where things get a little bit too much, right? So what are some hallmarks of things that we want to be looking for as far as safety goes, right? We don't want to be causing anybody to go to the hospital. This means concussions. This means like cuts, lacerations. This definitely means any kind of real serious joint damage, obviously breaking bones. We want to avoid those kind of things. Obviously, cleanliness, right? We don't want to be sending people away with MRSA or ringworm even. And, even though ringworm is super easy to deal with, like we still don't want to deal with that kind of stuff, right? So, do we want a sterile training environment? No. But, do we want one that's safe enough that you don't fear like getting an infection when you step on the mats? Yeah. Do we want to have, completely, bubble wrap coated everything so that we never feel a single impact? No, right? You have to understand what it feels like to deliver a real punch, and you have to know what it feels like to get hit by a real punch. But we also know that like our brains kind of get cumulative trauma, so we don't really want to take a ton of brain damage. But we can take a lot of hits to the body. And yeah, you got to watch out for hernias, but that's not a 100% everybody, every case. That is let's just be conscious of that and keep that as an undercurrent, and watch out for symptoms of like, hey, and then just ask people if they have, medical issues, right? With joint manipulations, you should know through your practice, you should always start off slow, and you should know where the end range is. And you know that if you push things past an end range, they're not going to go well. So you have to be really careful. And when you approach those end ranges, you slow it down, you back off the pressure. These are very simple principles. But the thing is that you want to run as close up to that wall of risk as you can without crossing the line, because you have to have something in your training to give you that gravitas, the seriousness of what it is that we're doing. At the end of the day, to quote Rory Miller, martial arts is really about the creation of cripples and corpses. We are training in damaging human bodies, from everything from making them psychologically give up the fight to making sure that they will never, ever, 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 ever fight again. Everything in that spectrum goes with at least the physical side of martial arts, right? And we have to be able to butt up against some of those risk factors, because otherwise we're never going to get any kind of inoculation against those higher stress levels. Obviously, we cannot train at very high stress levels all the time. Obviously, if we train at very low stress levels, we will not be prepared. So you probably want something akin to the body, the weightlifting, bodybuilding, powerlifting, the fitness world's idea of daily undulating periodization. Essentially, you go hard when you can go hard, you go soft when you can go soft, right? And you work in between, and you kind of make those things move up and down, as goes with your recovery, your scenario, who you're working with, and all of that. But training absolutely can be too safe, and training absolutely can be too dangerous. And it is important to find where those boundaries are. And that is a moving target. And so you're going to be having to chase that moving target day in and day out. As a general rule, like I like a lot of bare knuckle sparring. I actually truly very firmly believe that it makes things safer. But it also makes impact harder, and it makes people play more tactically. And you should be able to spar bare knuckle without leaving deep bruises, cuts, let alone any kind of like broken bones or anything like that, right? I mean, if somebody walks away with a small bruise, that's no big deal. Bruising is just kind of part of it. When I say deep bruising, I'm talking about the kind of thing where you go like, oh, like you're bruising bone and muscle and it's going to be hard for them to move because you've now created like an impact trauma that they're going to have to spend 2 weeks for recovering from, right? A small bruise where you burst the capillaries and they get a little discoloration isn't that big of a deal. It's going to be sore, but that's not going to get really in the way of training, provided that they take it easy on that location for a few days. That's not the big deal. The big deal is creating the kind of bruising that makes it where it's like really painful to the touch, or it makes it so you cannot even hold structure correctly. So we want to avoid that kind of bruising, those kind of strains. And again, we certainly don't want to be opening flesh up in any way, shape, or form during training if we can at all avoid it. And again, you have to have a little bit of grace for natural escalation, and you also have to have the communication skills to back off of that escalation when it goes too far, because it will inevitably occasionally go too far. But I urge you, butt right up against those risk levels as much as you can without crossing the line. This is akin to training at like a 9 or 9.5 RPE for your powerlifting, right? You're not maxing out every single day, but you got to get up close enough to that because you have to know how to handle those weights. And it's the same thing with the stress levels and the danger that we're dealing with in martial arts. All right, I'm done, and I will talk to you guys later. Good journey. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, share. Check us out on our other socials, and please head over to blacksunboxing.com to get a little more info, including how to contact us. Furthermore, if you are in the Phoenix area, please feel free to stop in, say hi, join in for a class, whatever. Also, if you ever see us cite sources or just for additional content, please check out our Substack. That is where we put all of the sources we use in our videos and is a major part of this. Plus, it serves as a membership platform for long distance learning and for people who would like to support us but aren't local. We would greatly appreciate it if you signed up. Even just the free membership helps us out a lot. All right, I will see you guys in the next video. Good journey.